Welcome to a new video again about the X300 Pro, and I got so many comments about people that want me not to do only raw lighting and explain it to them, but also, yes, you're right, another message arriving. What about the manual settings that you can do in the normal photo mode? You can just turn the sharpness down. Doesn't it help with getting HDR and multiple frame stackings? Adding a bit more details without issues with over sharpening. And this is what I want to try out today. I have my own settings, I have some suggested settings and some other settings that I was trying out today in winter, Wesel winter wonderland with a lot of snow, so not so many colors in there, but nevertheless I took some interesting shots and let's check them out here. But first of all, let me show you the configurations and how you can reach them on the X300 Pro. For that, we go into the camera application under Photo, so no Pro mode. You just go in here, click on the settings icon and click on Effect. And if you click on it, a new icon appears here. If you tap on that, you have the possibility to change your settings. You can see the last settings that I did already was sharpness 100 and saturation -11. I did experiment with different levels in here, like my favorite one is contrast at -11 actually. It's a bit hard to dial in those settings. There we go, -11. And saturation -11 and sharpness -90. This is what I shot most of the shots with. But I also took some suggestions that said contrast -25, saturation -25 and sharpness -100. And then I was experimenting a little bit because sometimes you get some interesting shots out of it. But let's talk about the shots right now. So here we have the photos. On the left we have the default photo setting, and on the right we have the -11, -11, -90. So -11 in saturation, -11 in contrast and -90 in sharpening or sharpness, and this is what you get here. Do you notice the difference? Yes, I can immediately see that there is less contrast on the right than on the left. You can see it here, the trees for example, and the shadows there, and a little bit of less saturation as well, with the car being a bit brighter, less contrast. Of course, some kids came to play there, so it's not ideal situation to one by one check them out here and compare them, but look at the car, look at the details of the car, which one looks more natural, which one looks a bit more processed, more sharpening applied to. It is on the left for sure, and especially when it comes to foliage, like this greenery here, or used to be greenery, you can clearly see how much sharpening there is applied, and I think this is the main issue, sharpening and contrast. And if you decrease contrast and sharpening, you get a more natural looking, more DSLR-like looking, more camera-like looking shot, in my opinion. And the same goes also for the rest there in the background, as you see here. It's getting a bit of this softness look. Look at here, look at there. This looks just a bit too sharp, too over-sharpened, and this is what changes with this look. This is the main camera sensor here. You can also do it on the tele. For some reason here, you see the cutout is a bit different, so either with this tele here 10x I moved it a little bit and the white balance or contrast level changed too much, or it was reacting on the contrast too much because it's much more underexposed on the normal shot there. You can almost not see the eye there. When this shot I moved the contrast a bit down, and now you can see a bit more and it's getting a bit softer, but also a bit overexposed here on the snow. And because of this sharpness and contrast a bit higher on the default, the snow looks a little bit more like snow, where here it looks a little bit over processed. So yes, playing around with those settings can improve certain things, but not always, and you can also end up with such results here. You can also use the ultra-wide angle. On the ultra-wide angle, I think I could imagine, especially if you want to crop into ultra-wide angle photos. I'm not sure how many people are doing this, but here I could imagine that you might run into an issue with cropping in. Otherwise, you can see the difference in terms of smoothness. It is much smoother on the right, and on the left it's much sharper because more sharpening is applied there. And you have to choose your poison, which one you like more, the sharpened up version here or the smoothed out version here on my setting here. Let's go to the next one, people pictures, because this is the very interesting thing that I discovered when using the raw lighting. Not a huge difference, I have to say. Yes, you can clearly see on first glance that this is a bit less saturated, especially on my face, less warmly, less yellow there in my face, which might be better. But when it comes to sharpness and detail, even though this is -90 and this is, I don't know, the default setting, there's not much of a difference between them. It's still looking a bit over-sharpened. It's looking a bit too dark, my eyebrows there, because they're not that dark. So even with the contrast levels put down, I don't notice much of a difference between those two shots here, I have to clearly say. For people photography, I think the biggest impact that you get, and the softer look, if you want it, you get with raw lighting enabled, then you have a better soft shot than just playing with this. And yeah, some people will say, why are you not going -100 of sharpness? Yes, I could also do this. I did this. There's another test here and another proof that it's not always the best to just dial in some numbers that people are posting online, because macro photography, for example, there I like a bit of more sharpening and sharpness applied. Look how sharp it looks like to see the little details. And this is here the same shot. You see shutter speed and ISO are not so different here. Same shot, slightly maybe different angle, no car passing by in the background, but just sharpness on -100, -25 in contrast and -25 in saturation. And this is what you get as a picture. Yeah, clear as day that for macro photography, you don't want to dial in the sharpness -100 and maybe leave the rest, like the contrast, also at the default. Now here, I try to do a comparison. Left is the default, right is my setting, -11, -11, -90. And then I have another shot with the -100 and -25, 25. Just look at this. First of all, the saturation is really a bit toned down, but it's subtle. It's very subtle. Here it's like a very subtle difference in terms of color tone, together with the contrast that is also a very subtle difference. Just makes it a bit more realistic looking, in my opinion, with the -11, -11. And of course the sharpening to -90, because here look at how sharp it looks like, look how soft it looks like here. And this is what I dialed in, because I had the best experience so far with this setting there, looking more DSLR-like, more the way I like it. But if you want to, you can also go to the -25, -25 and -100. Then you can see it's not a huge difference, but it's a more noticeable difference here in terms of colors. Softer even, and yeah, less sharp, of course, less contrasty as well. Yeah, you have to choose your poison. I have already told you what is my preferred way, but you can choose what you want to. I think in this case here, the -25 in terms of contrast worked quite well in combination with the -100 here on this building, because look at the left, how much over-processed, how much over-sharpened it looks like, and on the right, how much more natural it looks like with the bricks. The saturation is not so realistic anymore, because this red here in terms of saturation is more realistic on the default one. Maybe not 100%. This is why I'm tuning it down -11 in my setting. Yeah, but this is where I would suggest you play around a little bit to find what you like the best. But here I can live with the sharpness -100 and also with the contrast being -25. So this is where this one looks more realistic, more camera-like, where this one is just a bit over-sharpened also there with the back. So you can definitely improve your pictures, but there's no default setting that you can just say, okay, sharpness -100, contrast -25, and saturation -25. The same goes for my settings, like the -11, -11 and -90. It's also not always working. So you have to find some kind of middle ground. And here's the best example why the contrast lowering to -25 or contrast lowering in general might be not a good idea, because in such shots where you have this red strip of light there and snowflakes on it, and you want to really capture the mood with the little bit of shadows and a bit of darkness going on, putting down the contrast is not a good idea, because this is a less dramatic shot than this one, which on the default one looks a bit nicer. Yes, it is sharpening and a bit over sharpening. This is why we have a bit of busy background, and it helps to have sharpness to -100 there in this case. But the contrast is something that you shouldn't then lower if you want a bit more of a dramatic shot. And in this case, I tried it out as well. Just sharpness -100 and saturation -11, which I prefer to do, because then you get the right color of the bricks there, where this is a bit, too much colors there. And I let the contrast be contrast, and just check this out here. Not a huge difference, I know, not a huge difference, but still I prefer the one on the right a little bit better there. And yeah, like I said, my preferred settings for most shots, if I have to go to a fixed state, because if I don't want to change it, the -11, -1190 might be a bit more on the safer side than going down with the sharpness altogether. And I wouldn't touch the sharpness at all when it comes to macro photography, to be completely honest. Maybe only slightly, but this depends on what kind of shot you are taking. And the contrast I would only tune down when it comes to really those buildings where you don't want to have too harsh kind of shadows. And when it comes to people photography, maybe I would even go further down, -25, to get a better results with less contrasty kind of look. And the sharpness in general, putting it a bit down is helpful, but not always, like I showed you in those samples. So yeah, what do you think about tweaking and playing around with those settings? Write it down in the comment section. That's everything for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Until the next time. Bye.